Just imagine, you are working on a simple restaurant serving tables day after day when suddenly a customer drops something on the floor. You take it to return, and when you look, you notice a picture inside a wallet. A picture of your own mother, someone you haven't seen for years. What would you do? How would you react? This is the story of Amina, a young waitress of a small village in Africa, who lived this exact moment. And what did she find out after that? Well, get ready, because this story has twists that will leave you speechless. It was a hot morning at a roadside restaurant in Nigeria. Amina, 24, had worked there since she was 18, serving travelers and locals with a smile on her face, even if life had not been easy. Mother's orphan since she was 10 years old, she grew up with her grandmother in a humble house, carrying only vague memories of a loving woman who disappeared without explanation. Amina never knew what happened to her mother Ngozi, and that was always an open wound in her heart. She remembered small details, such as the smell of newly killed fabric that Ngozi brought from work, or the song she sang for Amin to sleep. But these memories, though sweet, also brought pain. That day the restaurant was crowded. Between orders for jollof rice, egusi soup, and soda, an elegant man entered. He didn't seem to belong to that place. Dressed in a flawless suit, gold watch on his wrist, he sat on a table in the corner and ordered a coffee. Amina noticed that he looked distracted, stirring his cell phone while waiting. But what caught his attention was when taking his wallet to pay, dropped her to the ground without realizing it. She ran to get the object and return it, but when she opened it to confirm if everything was there, her eyes froze. Inside the wallet there was an old photo, faded with time but unmistakable. It was her mother Ngozi, smiling as she remembered so many years ago. Amina felt the floor disappear under her feet. How could it be? Why was a stranger, clearly rich and outside, carried a picture of his mother? Her heart beat so fast that she could barely breathe. With shaking hands, she returned her wallet to the man, but not without first asking, with a hesitant voice, "Sorry, sir, but who is this woman in the picture?" The man, who until then seemed distant, lifted his eyes with an expression of surprise mixed with discomfort. "Why do you want to know?" he answered, almost defensive. Amina couldn't contain herself and said, "Because she's my mother." The silence that followed was deafening. The man, whose name was Victor Okonkwo, a known billionaire in the business world in West Africa, was pale. He asked Amina to sit for a moment, and what he started to tell changed everything she knew about her life. Victor revealed that he met Amina's mother, Ngozi, over 20 years ago, when he was still a young entrepreneur struggling to build his fortune. Ngozi was a vibrant woman, full of dreams, who worked as a seamstress in lakes. They met in a local market where Victor bought fabrics for a small business that was starting. The connection was immediate. Ngozi's smile, his intelligence and determination enchanted him. They fell in love deeply, but life separated them tragically. Victor explained that at the time he faced many family pressures to marry someone from an influential family, something that would guarantee his future in business. Ngozi, on the other hand, came from humble origins, and Victor's family never accepted it. Under threats and manipulations, he was forced to move away from her, not knowing that Ngozi was pregnant with Amina. When I heard about pregnancy years later, it was too late. Ngozi had disappeared, leaving Amina with his grandmother, and without leaving traces. Victor confessed that he tried to look for her for months, but to no avail. The photo in the wallet was all that was left of that lost love, a constant reminder of a mistake he could never notice. Amin listened to each word with a mixture of shock and unbelief. Like her mother, which she remembered as such a strong figure, could have gone through so much suffering in silence. And how did this man, who seemed to have the world at his feet, could it have let it happen? She felt angry, sadness, and overwhelming curiosity at the same time. Victor continued, saying that he spent years trying to find Ngozi, but never did. He looked at Amina with her eyes full of tears and said, "If you're her daughter, then you're my daughter too." These words hit Amin as a lightning. Can she, a simple waitress, be a billionaire's daughter? But more than that, the pain of knowing that his mother suffered for love made her devastated. She asked Victor why he no longer did to find Ngozi, why he let the family control him. Victor lowered his head, admitting that he was young, weak, and that the weight of expectations prevented him from fighting as he should. He said that if he knew the existence of Amin before, he would have moved heavens and land to be by her side. At that moment, Amina didn't know if she felt angry, sadness, or relief. It was a lot of information to process. Victor then made a proposal. He wanted Amina to take a DNA test to confirm paternity, and if it were true, he promised that he would give her everything he never had: an education, a home, a comfortable life. But Amin hesitated. Money wouldn't bring her mother back, and she didn't know if she could trust someone who abandoned Ngozi in the past. She needed time to think, to understand what all this meant. In the following days, Amina returned to work, but her mind was far away. Each dish that served, every conversation with customers seemed distant. She couldn't stop thinking about the photo, her mother's face, and Victor's words. Was he being sincere? Did it really regret the past? She decided to talk to her grandmother, the only person who could clarify at least part of this story. Sitting on the small balcony of the house in the light of a lamp, Amina opened her heart to the elderly woman, telling about the meeting with Victor and the photo in her wallet. Amina's grandmother, Chica, listened in silence with her face marked by years of work and worry. When the young woman finished speaking, Mama Chica sighed deeply and confirmed parts of the story. Ngozi, in fact, had fallen in love with a rich man, but he returned to the pregnant and broken village. She never revealed much about the relationship, but Mama Chica knew that Ngozi suffered deeply from abandonment. The grandmother always hid the details to protect Amin from pain, but now that the truth has come to light, she thought the girl should decide for herself whether or not she wanted to accept Victor's help. And now, what would you do instead of Amin? Would you accept the chance to change your life, even though you know that this would mean connecting with someone who perhaps caused so much suffering to your mother? Or would you reject everything, remaining faithful to the memory of those who created you with so much sacrifice? This decision was not easy for Amin, and what happened next will surprise you even more. Stay with me until the end, because this story keeps an even greater secret. While Amin reflected on what to do, Victor didn't give up. He returned to the restaurant several times, bringing small gifts, a book, a simple necklace, and insisting that Amina would do the DNA test. He also hired investigators to try to locate Ngozi, hoping that she was still alive. Amina, divided between curiosity and hurt, spent nights in course thinking about what her mother would like her to do. She remembered the stories that Ngozi told about courage and kindness, but also the sad look she sometimes saw on her mother's face. Finally, after weeks of hesitation, Amina gave in and took the DNA test. She didn't know what to expect, but she felt she needed concrete answers. When the result arrived, confirming that Victor was really her father, she couldn't contain the tears. It was true. That man, who seemed so far from his reality, was part of his history. But accepting Victor as a father did not mean forgiving him. Amina decided to set limits. She accepted financial aid to study and improve her life, but made it clear that she needed time to build any emotional relationship with him. Victor respected his decision and promised to be present whenever she needed it. He also shared stories about Ngozi that Amina had never heard, like her way of laughing at any situation or her passion for sewing colorful clothes. He told about the day Ngozi took him to meet a small river hidden around the lakes, where they spent hours talking about their dreams. These memories, though painful, helped Amin to feel closer to the mother she lost. Each story was like a piece of a puzzle she could never ride on her own. Meanwhile, the investigators hired by Victor brought unexpected news. There were clues that Ngozi could be alive, living in a distant city in southern Nigeria, called Port Harcourt. Amina felt a mixture of hope and fear. What if your mother was really alive? What if she didn't want to see her? Victor offered to accompany her in the search, but Amina decided she needed to do it alone. She wanted answers directly from the source without intermediaries. After all, this was a personal journey, something she felt she needed to face with her own strength. The trip to Port Harcourt was long and full of anxiety. Amina took a crowded bus, sitting next to a dusty window. watching the landscape change from open fields to busy streets. Each kilometer seemed to increase the tension in his chest. When he arrived at the address, a small brick house with a bad garden, Amina knocked on the door with his heart in his throat. A woman opened, and although time had left her marks, Amina immediately recognized her mother's kind eyes. Ngozi was alive. The two hugged, crying, without saying a word for long minutes. It was as if time had stopped, as if all those years of separation disappeared in that only moment. Ngozi explained that after being abandoned by Victor, she tried to rebuild her life, but the difficulties led her to move several times. She left Amin with her grandmother because she believed she couldn't offer a decent life to her daughter. Each day away was torture, but Ngozi thought he was doing his best. She never knew that Victor sought her out, nor that he was now a powerful man. When Amina told about the meeting with him, Ngozi was in shock, but showed no anger. "The past is past," she said, with her embargoed voice. "What matters is that we are together now." Amina spent days with Ngozi, recovering lost time. They talked for hours, laughed at small things and cried together when remembering the difficult times. Ngozi showed Amina an old notebook where she kept drawings of clothes that never sewed, dreams that time did not let. Amina felt that she was first meeting her real mother, not just as a distant memory, but as a woman of flesh and bone, full of hope and scars. Amina decided to take Ngozi back to the village so she could reconnect with her family. Mama Chica, seeing her daughter after so many years, fell in tears, hugging Ngozi as if she was never release her. It was a moment of healing for everyone, although the wounds of the past were still there, visible in every look, in every silence. Victor, knowing the news, asked to find Ngozi, but Amina made it clear that it would depend on her mother's will. She didn't want to force anything, not after all that Ngozi went through. When the meeting finally happened weeks later, it was loaded with emotion. Victor arrived at the village in a discreet car, without the luxury that usually accompanied him, as if he wanted to show that he was there with an open heart. He asked for forgiveness on his knees with tears in his eyes, saying he never surpassed the mistake of letting her go. Ngozi, although not accepted immediately, said he needed time to heal the wounds of the past. Amina watched everything, feeling that for the first time her family was starting to unite, even if fragile. Amina's story is not just about reunions. It is about resilience, overcome pain and finding strength in the roots. She continued to work at the restaurant for a while, even with Victor's financial aid because she wanted to maintain her independence. But over time, he decided to study nursing, a dream he always had to help people like his grandmother, who created her with so much love. She enrolled in a school in the nearby town, balancing her studies with frequent visits to her mother and grandmother. Every step seemed like a tribute to Ngozi and Mama Chica, two women who taught her the value of perseverance. Victor, in turn, began to get more involved with the village. He funded the construction of a small community clinic, something Amina suggested, so that people have access to basic health care. Although Amina still kept some emotional distance, she began to realize that Victor was actually trying to repair her mistakes. It was not something that would erase the past, but it was a beginning. She has learned to accept that not all relationships need to be perfect to be significant. Today, Amina lives a more stable life, divided between her studies and the care of her mother, who moved close to her. Ngozi opened a small sewing store in the village, resuming his passion from years ago. Each dress she makes carries a little of her story, a piece of her dreams that time tried to erase but couldn't. Victor is still present but respects the space that Amina and Ngozi need. He created a study fund for Amine, and even funded improvements in the village where she grew up, as a way of repairing the past. Although their relationship still has ups and downs, there is a growing understanding, a bridge being built on years of sorrows. This story shows us that even in the most unlikely circumstances, fate can bring answers. Amina never imagined that taking a wallet lying on the floor would change her life forever. She found not only her father but also her mother, and, most importantly, found herself in the process. His tears, which began with shock and pain, became tears of hope and gratitude. She has learned that life, even with her scars, can be beautiful in unexpected ways. But what about you? What did you think of this story? Did Amina do the right thing by giving Victor a chance? Or do you think she should have kept distance? Leave your opinion here in the comments because I want to know what you would do in her place. And if you know someone who would like to hear this story, share the video. Stories like Amina's remind us that life is full of surprises, and sometimes even in the smallest actions, we can find great answers. I want to highlight an important point that this story teaches us: the importance of never giving up seeking the truth even when it seems painful. Amina could have ignored the photo in Victor's wallet, could have left the past where she was, but she chose to face her doubts and fears. This led her to rediscover her mother and better understand her own story. How many times have we avoided confronting the past for fear of what we can find out? The journey of Amina is a reminder that sometimes the truth, however difficult, is what frees us. Another aspect that marked me was Ngozi's strength. Even after so much suffering, she did not keep a grudge. This does not mean that she forgot what happened, but she chose to focus on the present, in the reunion with her daughter. It is a lesson of resilience that we can all bring to our lives. How many times do we carry hurts that keep us from moving on? Maybe it's time to look at Ngozi's example and gradually try to leave the weight of the past behind. She teaches us that forgiving is not to forget, but to find peace to continue living. Finally, the story of Amina also tells us about second chances. Victor made serious mistakes but tried to repair them. Do everyone deserve a second chance? This is a question that each of us needs to answer based on our experiences. In Amina's case, she decided to open a door for her father, but without forgetting to protect her heart. It is a delicate but possible balance. She shows us that second chance is not about erasing the past, but about building something new, even if it's slowly. I also want to talk about the role of Chica Breast in this story. This woman who created Amina alone, facing financial and emotional difficulties, is an example of unconditional love. She never gave up her granddaughter even when life seemed impossible. Mama Chica kept secrets to protect Amina, but when the time came, she gave her the freedom to choose her way. This made me think of how many grandparents, mothers, and maternal figures around the world make silent sacrifices for those who love. Perhaps it is time to recognize these daily heroines. If you have gotten here, thank you so much for following this exciting story. I know it was a long video, but I believe that every detail of Amina's life deserved to be told with love. So if you liked it, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive more stories like this. I love to bring content that touches the heart and make us reflect on life, and there is more. If you have a personal story or know someone with an amazing experience to share, send us here in the comments or by the channel email. Who knows, the next story I tell, not yours. I also want to know, which part of the Amina story most marked you? Was it the moment she saw her mother's photo? Or the reunion with Ngozi? Or maybe the Chica Breast Force? Tell me everything to me, because I read all the comments and love to interact with you. Meanwhile, here's an invitation for you to watch other videos from the channel. There is a story about a man who discovered a family secret in an abandoned attic that is making the biggest success. Click there in the card to check it out. And don't forget, life is full of twists, and sometimes a simple action can change everything. As with Amina, who knows what the destination reserves for you tomorrow? I want to take the opportunity to talk about how stories like this connect us. When I first heard of Amina, I felt a tightness in our hearts because, in a way, we all have pieces of our history that we would like to understand better. Perhaps a relative we don't know, a decision of the past that marked us, or even a mystery that has never been resolved. Amina reminds us that seeking these answers, even if it's scary, can bring healing. So if there is something in your past you feel you need to face, maybe now it's time to take the first step. In addition, Amina's journey made me think about the value of the little things. It was a simple gesture, taking a floor wallet, that triggered all this transformation in your life. This shows us that sometimes the most important moments come from where we least expect it. How many times do we ignore the details of everyday life without realizing that they can carry a huge meaning? Perhaps we should pay more attention to what surrounds us, to the people who cross our way, because we never know when life will surprise us. Finally, I want to leave a special message. Stories like Amin's show us that even in the most difficult situations there is room for hope. She faced the loss, doubt, and fear, but in the end, she found love and answers. This does not mean that everything was perfect, but she learned to live with the imperfections of her history. And isn't that what we all do, one way or another? Life does not come with a manual, but teaches us every day how to deal with their curves and challenges. I want to thank you once again for being until the end. If this story has touched you in any way, share it with someone who needs to hear a message of strength and overcoming. And if you are going through a difficult time, remember that you are not alone. Sometimes life looks like a messy puzzle, but the pieces fit over time. As with Amina, who from a simple waitress became the protagonist of a story of reunion and transformation, you can also find your way. Amina's story also invites us to reflect on family power, no matter how she is. Whether it's the family that creates us, as Mama Chica did with Amine, or the family we rediscover, like Ngozi and Victor, the important thing is the love that unites us. Even with errors, even with distances, the family bond has a force that can overcome time. So how about enjoying this story as a reminder to value who is by your side? A phone call, a hug, a sincere conversation. Small gestures can strengthen ties that look fragile. So that's it, guys. Until the next video, take care, spread love around, and never stop believing that the best may be coming. A big hug, and we see each other in the next story. Goodbye.